Hey, John, mute your mic.
Oh, right. Hey, welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, as usual, you can send questions and comments to the Facebook event page for episode 260, Masonic Education, or on the YouTube chat running alongside this video. So, again, hello and welcome to all of those joining us live. My name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, in Fairfax, Virginia. We have a nice full crowd tonight, starting with Mike the intern. Say hi, Mike.
Hey, Mike, the intern here, Mike Hambrecht of, what is it, Triandria Lodge 780, where I am the junior deacon and lodge education officer, and Lakeshore Lodge number 307 in Madison, Ohio. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Next up, Juan Sepulveda.
Hello, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in sunny Kissimmee, Florida, where I serve as the lodge historian and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Good evening. Jason Richards, say hi.
Hi, everybody. Jason Richards here, past master of Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C. And the episode title tonight is episode 260, Masonic Education.
Is that
M.A., Massachusetts? Huh?
Masonic?
Masonic?
Isn't it the original debate? Like, instead of brethren or brethren, is it Masonic or Masonic?
Is it operative or speculative? Who knows?
Operative, speculative. Sure. Well, let's see. We do have two special guests tonight from the Masonic area of Massachusetts. So, in no particular order, we have Brother Mike Jarzabek. Say hi. Let's see. First, go along the top and unmute your mic. I wanted to make sure along the top of your screen that the background noise, the papers rustling, didn't interfere. There you are.
Good evening, everyone. Mike Jarzabek from Brigham Lodge in Ludlow, and also the Meadows Lodge in East Longmeadow, and Ezekiel Bates in Attleboro.
Ezekiel Bates, where have I heard that lodge name before?
It sounds familiar, but I don't think we've ever been.
Right there.
Those guys fly under the radar.
Masonic Con itself. Yes. Good. Thanks for having me. And also, Brother Heath, introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. This is Heath Verburg, past master of Mount Hope Lodge in Fall River, Mass. Also a member of Bristol Lodge in North Attleboro and Ezekiel Bates Lodge in North Attleboro. Currently serving as the chairman of education and training for the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. So tonight we're going to cover a little bit about Masonic education. In case you haven't heard, we're big fans of Masonic education. So we thought it was a good time to bring our brothers on who are trying to make changes at the Grand Lodge level, specifically under the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, to continue to grow out a revitalization in, as it were, in Masonic education. And so we'll kind of let them share their experience of what their goals are, how far they're coming, and so forth. Jason?
So I was gonna say, a lot of this started back last year at Masonicon last year when we first really got to know brother Mike and brother Heath, and brother Mike at that point was actually in the Grand Line of the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, and it was just so refreshing being able to have some deep conversations about what Masonic education is in a lot of Grand Lodge jurisdictions and what it could be, and just seeing Mike's eyes light up and resonate with just the art of the possible with Masonic education was a breath of fresh air, I know, for me. So we knew we had to get these guys on because we're excited about what they're doing.
So given that, let's start with Brother Mike to talk about kind of what is the initiative underway and where did it come from.
So we have what's called the Lodges of Instruction in Massachusetts. That's what I'm the chairman of. I think other jurisdictions also have similar programs.
Real quick, yeah. So in Virginia, we have Lodges of Research. Is that a similar type of activity?
Oh, we have that too, which Heath will probably talk about. But the Lodges of Instruction they started out almost as in the 1800s. They were used to make sure the ritual was all consistent. But later on, that changed, and somewhere around the 20s, I believe, they made it so that it was candidate instruction, and later it became officers instruction as well. But the main goal of it still in the constitutions is to make sure that the candidates are properly trained, because when they were cranking through all these, the golden years of masonry with all these, candidate pushes where they were doing 2 degrees a week, they found that the lodges weren't spending much time actually educating the candidates. And then when they would go to different jurisdictions, they would find that they didn't know what being a Mason was all about. So to solve the problem, they made lodges of instruction. Instead of having the lodges do what they were supposed to do in making and educating Masons, they decided to fix it from a top-down approach. So to this day, we still have the lodges of instruction in Massachusetts. And up until this year, the officers instruction was also taught at the lodges of instruction, so the way it goes is each district, Massachusetts has 33 districts, including, if we include the district in Japan, and each of those district deputies in charge of those districts are responsible for having a lodge of instruction every month for 10 months out of the year, to educate the candidates and to educate the officers. So what we were seeing was that a lot of the guys that were going to get officer training weren't very happy with it. We have a mandatory program where you have to complete 7 out of 10 of those in a year to either be elected as a warden or a master. And so we found there was a lot of negativity around it. And so with the Grand Master's permission, we took officers instruction out and decided to move it online. And so we've done that. We've built out the mechanics, and now we're trying, the plan is to try to bring Masonic Education online, an online version of Masonic Education for pretty much everything you could think of in Masonry.
So like type of dinners, flavors of green beans, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly the opposite. Yeah.
Yes, that, but the opposite. So like what?
Well, this is a good example. You guys have been doing Masonic Education for 260 episodes. Once Camy's been doing it for 300 and something. There's plenty of winding stairs. We can go on and on. So I've never felt comfortable when everybody takes a Masonic Education and kind of says, like, this is Masonic Education and it fits in this box. To me, anything in the world can be Masonic Education. As long as the principles are, you're talking about principles, you're talking about philosophy that goes back to at least Greece, if not farther. That's in everything. So I'm not a big fan, and Heath isn't either, or any of us, of trying to reinvent the wheel. So I know we've reached out to you guys. We've reached out to RJ specifically, Dago and the Fraternal Review, and all of you have agreed to let us use the podcast or other, writings or whatever to use that for education. So the thought is that whether it's a podcast, whether it's artwork, whether it's a magazine article, it's all Masonic Education. And if we can bring that together and not just have it, what do you guys see as Masonic Education? Usually it's multiple choice questions. Even if it's online, it's very formulaic. It always looks the same. We want to get away from that.
Well, no, just learning the ritual should be enough. That's all the Masonic education you need, right?
We don't need
rote ritual memorization.
That's a touchy subject.
Yeah, and I mean
that's not to say that ritual isn't important.
Exactly.
Right, because it should include that, but it's not all of that.
It's the first course in a 5-course meal.
Right, and I think sometimes that even gets a short. The ritual is important because you're internalizing it, right? Like the places that are not that are making it so you don't have to memorize ritual anymore, they're also doing a disservice to Masonic education, because doing the ritual and going through the officer line, in my mind, that's Masonic education as well.
Yes, it's just not it's just if you see that as the end all be all to Masonic education, I would say you have an overly narrow scope of Masonic education. It's definitely an important part of it.
So I look at it this way. Ritual education tells our members what the working tools are and what they're used for, but it doesn't tell them how to use them correctly. And there's a huge opportunity there to help people learn how to use their tools correctly and to put them to use. Now, education doesn't necessarily we can't do it for you. There's a huge part of education, which is the whole, you can lead a horse to water, but can't make them drink. The same way you can lead a Mason to light, but you can't make him think. Education is a participant sport. You have to be willing to educate yourself.
It's interesting. I've gone to teaching recently, and one phrase that I've learned that I like is, I can teach it to you, but I can't understand it for you.
Very true.
And a lot of that is also true for Masonic education. One definition that I like, because it is so broad, is it includes the ritual forms, customs, and usages of the fraternity, but also includes the history, philosophy, and symbolism as well. And so if you're looking at just one piece of that, you're not getting the entire flavor of all the flavors that Masonry has to offer. And so all of those should be included when we talk about the entire spectrum of Masonic education. So how's this project going along? What is the Grand Lodge in Massachusetts attempting to do differently, and where are they in the life cycle of building this thing out?
I wish there was an easy answer to that question. So I'm going to take this in a couple of different approaches, because there's a few things that roll up into the Education and Training Committee. So Mike has talked a little bit about what we're doing with Lodge of Instruction, and we're kind of really in phase 1 of that. We've turned control of the monthly district level Lodges of Instruction back over to the district deputies of those respective districts, so they can run programs, whether they're educational, whether they're historical, whether they're unrelated or not directly related to Masonry at all. Run programs that are of interest or of benefit to the lodges in their district. In order to support the vision that was set forth by Most Worshipful Richard Stewart a few years ago when he was Grand Master, we've taken the officer instruction and moved it online, so we still have some level of standardization of the content that's being delivered to lodge officers. Where Mike and his committee are going is kind of a college curriculum of liberal arts, where you can kind of find whatever you're looking for. It's a big box store approach in some regards to having a broad spectrum of courses, shall we say, that officers or even non-officers, but just members who are interested in learning more, can go out to the online training catalog and kind of pick and choose what they want to take. companion to that is the Master's Path program that we have in Massachusetts, where we are training specifically brethren, before our Grand Marshal comes after me for 3 syllables there, brethren who are interested in serving in the East would attend Master's Path and get leadership and skills training specific for what you need to know in order to run your lodge.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because in Virginia we have a Grand Lodge sponsored correspondence course.
Mhm.
And it's strongly encouraged that lodge officers take it, because it really does a deep dive into our Grand Lodge laws, called the Methodical Digest, in which it's a series of courses that ask some basic questions that you can search through a PDF or a hard copy of the Grand Lodge laws and determine what happens if the worshipful master is sick and the wardens are sick. Who's the next person to run the lodge, if any? And you have to find where the official answer is out of the Grand Lodge rules. And so it's optional, but it's good to take, because one, it's cheap and free, or cheap and easy, and gives you a leg up for getting some of the administrative logistical type of answers at the ready.
I think that's a fantastic idea. And I say that, so Mike and I served as district deputy grand masters together a few years ago. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we've always faced, especially for people serving in that role, is dealing with the constitutional questions that come up from the masters of your lodges, because they don't know, they aren't familiar with the constitutions, let alone their bylaws. Totally different issue. But I think having a way that will build familiarity with your Grand Lodge constitutions is fantastic.
And so you hope to have that same kind of program at the Grand Lodge, Massachusetts, as well, accessible to anyone, including the lodge officers?
I think that's a fantastic thing to put on my to-do list for next year, assuming I get reappointed.
And we're glad I'm validating what you already knew to be true.
Now, you guys were mentioning, like the leadership training and that kind of stuff that you're doing. Have you guys looked at the Grand Lodge of North Carolina's programs for that stuff at all? They have I forget the full name, but it's the Davy Academy. That is their leadership training. And it is, I know it's a long term training. It's actual like on-site school training. And they want their officers to go through that training. I'm not sure if that's required, that kind of stuff, but I do know that they have a pretty good training program there. Then they also have a thing called Wilkerson College, which is North Carolina's College of Freemasonry. And then they also have a program similar in its way to what the Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction has for education, meaning the Master Craftsman program. They call it the Middle Chamber program. They've got a lot of really good stuff. And I used to listen to a podcast by some guys from North Carolina that were heavily involved in the Wilkerson College and the Davy Academy. That's why I originally heard about those. But I haven't been to North Carolina to actually partake of any of that. So,
Mike, I'll let you take that one.
So, after Masonicon and meeting Ben Wallace and kind of having our minds blown by everything that he has to offer and what he brought to the table with the Middle Chamber program, we're currently working through the logistics of getting our Grand Lodge to talk to their Grand Lodge. That's what Ben had requested. And when I first met Ben, I was like, I'll take it. And then I told Heath later that I would take it. And then we told the Grand Master later. And I mean, we have a lot of autonomy. We're lucky. Our Grand Master is awesome. And, he trusts us. He put us in a position to do, what he needs us to do. And he really, I don't think he's ever came down on us and told us, why'd you do that? Luckily, we're not like that. So maybe that's part of it too. But, so yeah, we're currently working on that right now to get together with those guys and try to bring that to Massachusetts. It's an awesome program. And like I said, I mean, you see a lot of Grand Lodges and a lot of jurisdictions. They seem to they want to build their thing so that they can bring it to the rest of the country. We don't really want to build our thing. We want to collect the best of what's out there already. I mean, I don't want to spend 400 hours developing content that people already worked on. It's not good for anybody. I mean, if anyone who's listening to this, if you're out there and you have good content, send it our way and we'll try to put it up.
Yeah.
A wise Mason once told me, "'Tis better to ask for forgiveness than permission," but then he was expelled.
So if I get a phone call tomorrow, you all are getting a nasty email.
That's whence came you at Gmail.
Remember, we don't represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions.
Well, we do.
Yeah, don't know if the same could be said for you.
So the other thing we're doing right now, where we're at with it, is myself and Brian Simmons we did a lot of the planning for this. We have Kevin Flynn who built out the website for us and did a lot of planning as well. Brian and I are really good at going out and finding people and bringing in content. I'm not good at saying no to any content. I'll fit anything in, like I just tried to a couple minutes ago.
Ruark has a very interesting presentation on phallus worship.
Got a lot of pictures.
Heath, that might cost you your dues card.
Do anything I want on my last day of masonry.
So what we did this year is we brought in a guy, Michael Bickford. He's the Deputy Grand Master of Council now, I think, in Massachusetts, and guy's phenomenal. And he put together a team of educators that are now working on a curriculum map, so we can actually put this in some kind of a organization where someone can actually go and use it and sort through the hundreds of thousands of things that we put online.
So that brings up a good question that I know Brother Paul Hooten asked in the chat, and that's one that isn't necessarily intuitive, which is we're talking to two Massachusetts brethren. Can anyone from any jurisdiction use these resources?
At this moment, it's locked into our site.
Exactly.
But
meaning just for Massachusetts brothers.
Right.
That's correct.
Which I think, some of you guys are. If not, you're going to be members of Ezekiel Bates soon anyway. So, it'd be available to you. So anybody that wants to, just join.
There you go.
Ezekiel Bates, and we're good.
Yeah, but I mean, that brings up a good point, because one thing that's not been said yet is that every most Grand Lodges are trying to do some sort of educational system of some sort, whether it be purely ritual or even beyond ritual. And the first thing you'll read on their sites is that it's strictly for the brothers beholden under that Grand Lodge. And so while that's useful, and in fact, some things like the PA Academy of Masonic Knowledge, they have their program where they list all the books that you have to read to get to certain levels, and all. It's all right there, but you can't get the fancy shiny certificate unless you're a member of that Grand Lodge. So I don't know if that's a good middle ground to say. It's kind of like edX. edX is an online education platform where most, if not all, of the courses are free, but if you want a certificate, it costs you $50. And so it's the middle ground of a freemium model to Masonic education, where you can do it on your own, but it's not real unless it's your Grand Lodge.
So I think some of that's out of necessity, right? Because I can't teach you about the Grand Constitutions from across the country just from Massachusetts' point of view, because our constitutions are different than everybody else's are. So there's some of this material that's going to be just specific to Mass.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't want someone coming and taking this and not understanding that fact because they're newer in the fraternity, and then going back and doing something and getting in trouble for it because they didn't realize that we don't speak for the whole entire country. So I guess we need to be careful in that regard. But I think logistically, as we move forward, I think it makes sense to open it up.
I will tell you, like with PA, when he was talking about the Academy of Masonic Knowledge there with that, I spoke with some people from there, and it's really, it is a logistics thing for them that they don't allow it out to other jurisdictions. Because first, just trying to verify someone from another jurisdiction is painful. And second is then having the number of people to actually grade the papers and so forth that you submit for that. It's a lot of work there, and that would definitely multiply the number of people they need to actually have working on that. So that's why they don't do it. But
I look at it this way: we all get paid the same wages. Having an additional certification or a fancy piece of paper from whether it's Pennsylvania or Massachusetts or some other Grand Lodge, whether it's in the States or abroad, isn't going to increase my wages, but it will increase my knowledge, and it will increase what I can give back to Masonry in my state or even to my family or my community. So if it's something I can take, it's in my best interest to gain that experience and gain that knowledge and gain that insight, whether or not I get a fancy certificate to hang on the blank wall behind me.
I think the Scottish Rite Master Craftsman program would beg to differ.
They may, but they still make the same money I do.
That's a good point, though, John, because being a Scottish Rite Mason from the Northern Masonic jurisdiction, I signed up for the Master Craftsman program, and I got like 2 chapters into it and said, I don't even understand what they're talking about because these degrees aren't the same. So I couldn't finish it.
Right.
I tried to find Hitchens, what was it, The Path to Light, something to that effect. And I couldn't get my hands on that. That might have helped me a little bit. But other than that, nothing short of going down to the Southern jurisdiction would help me actually understand what they were talking about.
Right.
Yeah, I got all 3 of those programs. I still haven't finished them, but I have all 3 of those programs. And I got them when I was down there so that I would get all the right books because I paid for it with the books in the package. So.
Mike, we'll be there in a few weeks, so you can just stop in at the store and pick them up.
True.
So let's fast forward in time a little bit. You guys have talked about a couple things that you're trying to. What does success look like, or at least the near-term success? Say, fast forward 6 months to a year from now, Massachusetts has this in place. What does it look like? How would people use this? What do you envision that looking like?
What's a day in the life?
So right now, the general organization of it is kind of circular, right? So we start out as a young Master Mason, and you progress through different levels of understanding, different levels of being an officer. And I say circular because when you're done as Master, I mean, some of you guys have served. Then you're like, okay, I'm done. Now what's next, right? So you kind of start back at the beginning again, or you go on to be a district deputy, and then it's still after that, you're like, what's next? So we want to always bring that back into the beginning so you get maybe more of a nuanced understanding of stuff that you had originally. You had a basic understanding, and now as a master, you might have a different perspective. As a district deputy, you have a different perspective. I mean, every time I sit in lodge, I think like, oh wow, now I understand this, and then 6 months later, I forget what I understood, and it's a whole different level of understanding of maybe even a different topic. So we want to just create this. I kind of threw it around like it's like a choose your own adventure book, right? Like you just start and just keep on clicking. We had got some contact to a brother from Harvard Lodge that ran a company that did micro learning. So a lot of the what it's going to look like in the long term is very short, very specific topics. They might be 2 minutes in length of a video with a few questions and a takeaway, and something that you actually have to do. Because if we don't, I've been obsessed lately with the fact that if so much of this education, we put it up at like a book on a shelf and we collect it, and it's like, oh, I know this and I read that, but yeah, I was actually thinking about that, but I wasn't going to call you out.
Yes. If there are no other questions, I've read every book on this bookshelf.
But it's applying it, right? Like it's that whole, what have we done with it? And so that's a big part of it is that we want to make sure that what we're giving to people is useful in their day-to-day life and running of a lodge and whatever that is. Because if it's not, really, we're no better than the guys that are collecting jewels, really, or degrees or anything else, if we don't apply it.
So let me ask a hard question. If Masonic education, I think, has dwindled a little bit, where that those who are at least looking for a lot of esoteric symbolism philosophy it's waned a bit in the past couple decades, and you have new brothers who are kind of joining, looking for more light. And when told, okay, well, if you're not finding education in lodge, just go ask your mentors and ask your past masters, and that can often
they don't know it either.
They don't know it either. Exactly. So so if you were to ask them, well, what does this mean? And then they say, I don't know, or don't follow up and don't give an answer, then it's really tough to go to the next level, right?
Well, wasn't this, John, the entire premise of Albert Pike's Esoterica?
Oh man, I loved that. The first couple pages, chapter even, of just letter after letter of Albert Pike being not satisfied with the answers he was getting from his mentors throughout his Masonic journey, that he had to go off and do his own research. And that seems to be the current state of where things are done today. That, I mean, just in my personal experience, I dove right in, I jumped in with both feet, and I was doing lots of research, and I wasn't seeing that in lodge. I wasn't seeing that sponsored at the Grand Lodge. And so to me,
that's why we started this show.
Right. It seems to me that Grand Lodges are a little, I'll call it for what it is. They're a little scared to put together a structured set of a system of education based on the system of morality that we have, because they don't know themselves. With certain exceptions, like down in North Carolina. But how would you respond to that? How would any of the hosts respond to that?
Well, I also have another thought on that too. I agree with you that there might be some of that fear, but here's another thing that happens. Education committees come up with great ideas. They start getting implemented. The next Grand Master comes in and he's got a whole nother agenda to go. So that education program gets pushed to the side and this new direction gets picked up. And then it happens again. There's another cycle of that. We're getting this new program, and a new Grand Master comes in and says, that program is not in what we want. This is what I want. And again, it happens again. That's another thing I think happens a lot.
So I think Massachusetts may have a little unique, or at least rare situation in that regard, given the fact that our Grand Master served for 3 years. So I was hesitant to jump in on the question of where are we going to be 6 months to a year from now, because in 7 months, in December, we'll have a new Grand Master come in. So, one of the things that's in question is, am I going to be Chairman of Education and Training next year? I don't know. I'd like to be. And I just killed myself on that one, didn't I, Mike? So, what I can do on my committee is work with my program leads, such as Brother Jarzabek and such as Sam Newland, running Master's Path, and put together our plan for where we want to take those programs over the course of the next Grand Master's 3-year term. And then once that brother is identified, we then hopefully will have an opportunity to meet with him and sell our plan, and hopefully he'll be on board with it or tweak it to fit, his desires and his preferences and, whatever programs he wants to try to run, but hopefully will fit in and mesh and have the support of the next administration. So the fact that we have 3 years to execute against that gives you the opportunity to build a strong foundation that won't be as fluid as jurisdictions that only have a 1-year term.
And on that note, I wanted to point out the fact that even though we have a 1-year term for most of the chairs at the lodge level and the Grand Lodge level, it is important that brothers who are in that position understand that that doesn't mean that the vision has to be limited to a 1-year term. I understand that there's a level of ego that comes into place. Like, you have someone who wants to leave a legacy, wants to really make an impact the year that they're master. And I recently had a conversation with brother Robert Marshall, where we were discussing that specific topic about the fact that some people say, well, in my year we did this, or in my year we made this happen. We have to move past that whole my year mentality, because all we're doing is we're pretty much establishing that the rules of the game are only whatever you can make in 1 year. That's all that matters. So a vision as big as what you're putting together, visions like the one that all these other jurisdictions are putting together, they really depend on the brothers who are at the top level of the organization and of the project. They recognize it's not about them, but it's about the long-term success of the fraternity.
Yeah, Juan, I understand where you're going, what you're going for with that.
Don't
But I can honestly say that that really wasn't how I did it in my year.
Just had to go there, didn't you?
I did.
Hashtag.
I'd like to say,
go ahead, Mike.
so there's a few other things that I think have less to do with Grand Lodges not wanting to put education out and having to tread kind of a careful line with it. There's a few reasons for that. One, I mean, how many of you have seen somebody put out esoteric content in a mixed group with guys that really weren't interested in it?
That's like every day on the Winding Stairs Freemasonry group.
And it usually, I mean, it does nothing. It frustrates the guys that aren't into it. It embarrasses the guys that are into it, where they feel like they have to clam up and they can't talk about it anymore because they're going to be ridiculed for it. So it's tough for, history is almost like a better place to start with some of these educational programs because it's more accessible. But I like esoterics, but I don't want to. Plato didn't teach to the masses for a reason.
Yeah, and so to that point, I think history is the lowest common denominator.
Mhm.
And that's not a bad thing, but it's a place to start. And I think I could envision easily almost like, college courses, in the sense that if you want the history track, go take this. And if you want the symbolism track, take this. And if you want the philosophy track, take this. And that way people can pick and choose based on their interests. And there's something accessible to everyone, but it can go wide and deep.
Which is what we're trying. That's what we're trying to build out. Exactly.
Love it.
You explained it better than I did, but we went to a credit rather than it used to be a compliance thing, and we tried to go to credits because we're trying to say that it's something you're earning. It's not something that you're being forced to do.
Right.
The other reason that Grand Lodges need to be careful, though, is that Albert Ames was a past Grand Master in our jurisdiction. Guy's phenomenal. One day he said, in front of us, we had a conference, and he said, Grand Lodge is best when they tell you what not to do, because when Grand Lodge tells you what to do, then that's all you think you could ever do. So when Grand Lodge tells you this is what the point within a circle means, 90% of Masons are going to shut their brain off and figure, well, Grand Lodge already told me the answer. Our candidates all use the Cloudy books. I think they're a good place to start. I like Wilmshurst better, but The problem I have with it is now that becomes like the gospel. Like I don't have to think. I had a guy come up to me a while back and say that, everything in the ritual is absolutely true. And I pointed out a few things that were wrong. King Solomon's temple and how many people were in it. That couldn't possibly have happened in a place that was representative of a tent, right?
How dare you?
So to me, there's reasons they have those in there, because it's inviting you to think for yourself. And so when Grand Lodge comes out and says, here's a program, and when you're done, you have a certificate and you learned everything there is to know about esoteric content, it kind of goes against the spirit of esoteric content.
But I'm gonna be that guy tonight. But isn't that also the same when we say you're a master of the craft once you get your raise to the 3rd degree? Right? And so it's left to the brother to pursue his journey in Masonic education, right? That's the first day of the rest of your life. And I don't think we do not overemphasize that enough.
No, I mean, you're right. And don't think I'm arguing against this kind of education. I'm just saying that's why I think sometimes the Grand Lodges are tentative to, or hesitant to do some of this stuff, because
totally agree. Yeah.
It can easily go off the rails, because you'll start a conversation about something really simple, of very simple esoteric content, and it's like, how many steps does it take to get to the Kabbalah?
10.
Is that like licks to the center of the
yeah. I mean,
3.
How long is it going to take until a Grand Master just says 42? That's all you need to know. We're done.
But what's the question?
Yeah.
No, I think that's interesting, and honestly, I love the idea of Grand Lodges being enablers, and then putting those bounds only when they absolutely have to bring folks back to the center field. It's just it's interesting when we get into different Grand Lodge programs that specify a specific interpretation of the ritual or a specific interpretation of symbology. Because to me, we talk a lot on the show about provincial Masonry, and the idea that you have Masons who have never left their own lodge, much less their own jurisdiction, and so they have this faulty worldview that what they know of Masonry is the actual truth and the only way Masonry is practiced across the entire world. And so we see a lot of issues in social media where Masons come into conflict with each other because of different jurisdictions handling Masonry different ways. What?
Provincial Masonry.
Provincial Masonry, yeah. And I think having an overly restrictive, either at the district or Grand Lodge level, educational program or educational guidelines can further that sense of provincial Masonry and cause a lot more damage than is good.
And that's where Ohio jumped in with their Royal Schofield Society, which is a new education program. That part of it is a requirement to, like for the second set of the programs, you're required to travel within your jurisdiction district to 3 lodges and write a paper on it on your reflections of your travel. And then they do the same thing for the 3rd level, which is a master craftsman level, but they require you to travel outside of your jurisdiction. So it could be within the state, but outside of our district, but it could even be as far as going to another state, for stated meetings, special meetings, whatever. And then same thing again, writing a thing on it. That's just one piece that they added to try and avoid some of that, everybody just sticking around in their home lodge and not traveling. I mean, that's a hard thing to sell on people too, though, to a certain extent, but some are doing it.
So I would say this, it's right in our ritual. You want to become a Master Mason to enable you to travel and work in foreign countries. If you only stay in your one lodge or even in your one district and never travel anywhere else, you're never going to get exposed to someone else's ideas. Think of it. Your lodge knows Claudia, and all you ever hear is Claudia. So you only ever get that one interpretation of what our symbols mean. You'll
Or worse
never get
yet-
exposed to Wilmhurst if you don't travel.
Worse yet, they
Right.
can all tell you to read Born in Blood too.
Well, yeah, hey, it's a good story.
It's a good book.
I want to go back to something Juan said earlier about the 1-year terms and whether it's at a Blue Lodge level or whether it's at a Grand Lodge level. I think it's important, and he touched on it in that so much focus is put on what were my accomplishments while I sat in the chair and I got to wear the cool hat, right? But I think it's important, and what people who are driven by ego miss is it's not about you, it's about your lodge or your Grand Lodge, right? And if you're not working with the people who came before you and you're not working with the people who are coming behind you, then the ship you're steering is constantly changing course and you're never going to reach a destination. So you should be working together on a plan. Where are we trying to take our lodge, or where are we trying to take our Grand Lodge, and be working in concert to get there over the long term? It's not about what did I do in my year, as much as we'd like to think it is.
Here, here.
It should be more about legacy than about what did I accomplish.
Well, and it's the
What
lodge's
lasts?
legacy, right? It's
Yeah.
the lodge's legacy.
Yeah, what is going to last? What is going to take it to the future?
All right. Well, that's a good stopping point before we start to wrap things up. So again, thank you, brothers, for joining us all the way from Massachusetts, which is
It's wicked far.
Did you have to take the car to get here?
Yeah, I parked the car.
Park the car out on the street.
All right, let's go around for shameless plugs, final thoughts, and all that jazz. Starting with Mike, the intern.
So this was great. Education is one of my big things. It's what I do in my district. It's what I do for my Grand Lodge Education Committee. This is just one step in the right direction for hopefully a lot of jurisdictions. Hopefully. Anyway, for my shameless plug, first I'll plug tomorrow night for those in Ohio, Lakeshore Lodge, number 307, more light night. Robert Johnson will be there presenting his colonial Freemasonry or Masonry's Tavern Beginnings, Masonic Pub Crawl. And then in August, Camp Masonry is coming up. campmasonry.com. Go to that, check it out, and sign up so you can come and join us.
Awesome. Thanks. Let's move over to Juan Sepulveda for his final thoughts.
Brothers, thank you for joining us tonight and for having this discussion about such an important topic. As you all know, I'm very passionate about Masonry and about Masonic education. I think we miss out on the opportunity to reach people where they are, and not just in a physical location, but also in how they consume information. If I were to ask anybody from any industry, like, how do you consume your knowledge? And most people today are listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, going to, lynda.com or going to any of these learning platforms to get better opportunities in their job, to get better information about how to handle their life as husbands and, members of society. And for some reason, we are just dragging it out in Masonry. It's like, how do we do Masonic education? For the most part, you have to go and get some 3-ring binder that was designed, 30 years ago. And I honor the effort of the brothers that put that together. But something that would honor all their efforts even more is to bring it in front of people in a way that they can consume it more effectively. And what your brothers are putting together is an example of that. You probably heard that I have a program called Applied Freemasonry, in which I do just that. I take the aspects of masonry that can be applied to the life of an individual, and I put them in practical terms so that brothers can actually go step by step, looking through a series of videos, actually downloading some spreadsheets to organize their time, things that are of today, Facebook groups, the whole shebang. And it has been successful just because of that, because it's put in a way that the man of today can consume in an effective way. So, the other thing I wanted to mention is, think, for the brothers listening, think of how Masonic education, like, what is your ideal of what Masonic education would look like in your lodge, in your jurisdiction, and in Freemasonry as a whole. Like, go nuts, think about it. Like, virtual reality, sure. you know uh Augmented reality, put it in there. Your optimal image of what Masonic education is, and first recognize that you can't do it by yourself and you cannot do it in a year. So focus on how can you get there, and what's the team that is going to help you achieve it. So I hope that you take that to heart and make Masonic education a pinnacle of your Masonic endeavors. And I guarantee you that our fraternity is going to turn back the tide and come back swinging. Thank you for everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of this. Go to the Winding Stairs, sign up for the emails. There's a big announcement. And when I say big, it's a big announcement from the Winding Stairs. You want to hear it first. Thank you, brothers.
Awesome.
No, Juan's not leaving TMR.
I'm not.
Are you?
No.
Okay.
Wait, are you? Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, Jason, what's up?
Oh man, Masonic education is such a huge part of Masonry for me personally. It's I came in because of a familial tie, and Masonic education has single-handedly kept me here and kept me engaged. And it's I don't think Masonic education is key to the initiatic experience, but you can't even scratch the surface of the depth of Freemasonry and just the amazing nature of this organization without immersing yourself in it. And as Masons we're fundamentally searching for more light. And to the conspiracy theorists, that's not a Luciferian phrase or a Luciferian illusion. And so that natural curiosity for the world around us, for the fraternity, for the ideas and ideals that inspired the fraternity is what keeps a lot of us here and a lot of us going. And I just love to see Grand Lodge organizations that have the wherewithal to enable their constituent lodges and their constituent members to just fully embrace a beginner's mind when it comes to Masonic education, because there's so much that we can talk about, and there's so much that we can relate back to the fraternity, that the topics and the things that you can learn about from a Masonic education standpoint are virtually endless. And so here we are on episode 260, and we haven't run out of things to talk about yet. And we'll go for another 260, and we still won't have run out of things to talk about. And that's something that I think is unique to this organization, and that's why we do what we do and why we are who we are. And that's all I have to say about that.
Awesome. All right, Mike and Heath, any last thoughts?
Okay, Mike.
Just want to thank you guys for having us on, and for all that you guys do for Masonic education. I want to say, we talk about how we need to have more education, but I got to tell you, when I came in 2002, where we were at with Masonic education, it was like crickets back then, and now we're in we're in kind of like a renaissance of sorts. I mean, Heath and we were at Masonicon. We're going to the 8th annual Night of Light in New Hampshire this weekend. We're going down to Esotericon. We're going out to California with Dago to go to South Pasadena to Masonicon. I mean, our entire summer is just traveling around the country going to Masonic education, going to take part in events that are promoting Masonic education. And I'd say, we're going to do what we can in Massachusetts from a Grand Lodge perspective to bring education to the masses, but don't wait for Grand Lodge to do it, and don't wait for your district or your lodge to do it. Just like you guys did 260 episodes ago, let's get out there and wave the flag yourself. And even if it's not as, nuances of view as right now, I mean, the big thing is so many people wait for an authority. Don't wait for an authority. Just go out there and be your own authority. And, no one can tell you what the symbols mean except for yourself. So, again,
and maybe Mackie.
Yeah, maybe.
And your Grand Lodge.
Wilmshurst.
And Wilmshurst. All right, Heath.
Wait.
Thanks for having us. I really appreciate it. It was a great time being out here with you guys. I would say you all have to take responsibility for your Masonic education. Take an active role. If you're not getting what you're looking for at your lodge or at your district or in your Grand Lodge, then go make it happen, or go find somewhere that it's happening. Mike stole my shameless plug with Ancient York Lodge and their Night of Masonic Light coming up this weekend. So I will instead plug Masonicon 2020, April 18th.
Oh, you got
Put it in your calendars.
Nice.
We'll be there.
Last Masonicon.
Ha!
Perhaps.
Last.
Yes, last.
By the way, for those of you who don't know, Brother Mike Jarzabek has his own podcast. What is it, Mike?
So it's not just mine. It's mine with Ryan Flynn, Brian Simmons, and myself have Arts, Parts, and Points, which we've done 2 episodes of so far. And it's going pretty good so far. And the other guys don't like to call it a podcast. It's a Masonic discussion to them because they want it to be a little more long form, kind of like this was tonight, like this is. But we basically try to talk about how to make the change that we want to see in Freemasonry.
I know who the art is, so are you the part or the point?
Yeah, I really figured that part out.
Remember, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's a Masonic podcast.
Tell Ryan Flynn that.
He does art.
All right. Well, thank you, brothers. And I guess it's over to me now. I do want to give a special shout out to all the super chats tonight for those who are hanging out on YouTube and wanted to throw us some love. We got some love from Lucas Hess, Art Monk, Matthew Ryan Ross, Mark Perro, John Lawrence, Rob Jackson. So you guys have overachieved tonight, and we thank you very much for helping us out. Juan, you're going to say something?
Yeah, what's a super chat?
What's a super chat? Well, if you're joining us live on YouTube, you can click the little $ below the chat and contribute to the show. So all that money goes right back to the show. We get new microphones. We get the ability to travel. We get to do lots of special episodes, and that includes some little hidden episodes that we've recently shared with our Patreons supporters. So if you head on over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable, you too can support the show on a monthly basis. And if you join the Squire or Knight level, you get access to some extra little perks as well. So we try to keep things fresh over there. But we still will have this podcast available and open for everyone. So again, thank you. This is what we try to do to give back and make sure that we keep this Masonic education conversation going on for years to come, even after we're gone, even after we shut down. YouTube's forever. All hail Google. So thank you guys very much for watching. See you next week, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.